Some of the shots for the famous opening scene of Star Wars were filmed upside down. George Lucas wanted the Star Destroyer to appear humongous, but their model wasn't so big. So first of all, in order to create the illusion of size and scale, they added an incredible amount of detail under the ship, including tiny doors and windows, and the blockade runner, which was the size of a cigarette, was attached to it with a wire. The Star Destroyer was then flipped upside down, and the camera moved over it incredibly close, almost skimming the model. Finally, the shot was flipped the right way and reversed, and we have the iconic scene. The special effects people working on the original Star Wars trilogy would have killed to be able to use CGI. Back then they had to build and operate heavy machinery just to have the Millennium Falcon move a few inches. These guys have no idea how much easier it will become in the future. This was the original Millennium Falcon, but during the production of Star Wars there was a TV show called Space 1999, and they had a ship that looked just like it. George Lucas wanted something unique and memorable for Han Solo, so he used the current design for the blockade runner. He sent the designer off to come up with a new ship, but asked if he could keep the same cockpit and satellite dish from the first ship. Sitting in his kitchen, the designer looked over at the sink and saw a pile of dirty dishes and imagined one on top of the other, but it looked too much like a flying saucer, so he added an indication of direction and then managed to work in the cockpit, which he put to one side to emulate how a driver would sit to one side in a car. He added the satellite dish and the Millennium Falcon was born. George Lucas's original plan for the chessboard on the Millennium Falcon was to have real people walking around on it in creature masks, but George was beaten to it. A movie named Future World had just came out which had a scene with people on a chessboard, which would have made the Star Wars scene unoriginal. One day when checking the progress of other special effects shots on his weekly visit to Industrial Light and Magic, George by chance noticed a stop motion animation character on the shelf that the model maker had made when he was 20 years old. Just learning now that the guys were able to do stop motion animation, George showed the team the scene with an empty chessboard and asked if they could create a bunch of creatures and animate them in 2 weeks. They took on the challenge and created the now iconic scene, and they even used the original character George noticed on the shelf. For filming the cantina scenes in England, George Lucas had requested creature costumes, but all the costume department had available was a number of funny looking animals, straight out of some Beatrix Potter show. So thinking it didn't look alien enough, George had his design team create a bunch of extra creatures when he got back to America that looked more otherworldly, and since he had no actors available, he had the team dress up as the aliens themselves, and then filmed them on a small stage made to look like the cantina, and inserted the shots. This is England, and this is from the shoot in America. When George Lucas had returned to America from shooting Star Wars in Tunisia, with less than a year left until the movie was set to come out, he went straight to check on what special effects shots had been done. He was furious. $1 million had been spent, but only 2 shots had been done. This one with the escape pod, and this one with the gun on the Death Star. He was flipping out and panicking, but the time and money had been spent on building the unique camera equipment and the models to create the fantastic shots that we see in the final movie. It was a rush to get it done, but in the end they won Oscars, and George was very happy.